The United States Supreme Court has delivered a historic verdict, one that will be studied for generations to come. In a decision that reverberates far beyond the marble halls of Washington, the highest court in the land has stepped into the heart of a heated national debate. The justices have struck down President Trump's unilateral tariffs, a move that not only challenges a cornerstone of his economic agenda, but also redefines the very limits of presidential power in the realm of trade and commerce. The court ruled that Trump exceeded his constitutional authority by imposing billions in tariffs without congressional approval, shaking the foundations of global trade. This landmark decision sends a powerful message. Even the president must operate within the boundaries set by the Constitution. This decision not only invalidates a signature economic policy, but also forces a national reckoning over the balance of power in American governance. It reignites a centuries-old debate about who truly holds the reins of economic policy, the executive branch or the legislative branch. The ruling's impact is immediate and far-reaching, reshaping international markets, disrupting global supply chains, and influencing the prices Americans pay for everyday goods. From the cost of groceries to the fate of American manufacturers, the effects will be felt in households and boardrooms alike. For years, the unpredictability of U.S. trade policy has kept allies and adversaries on edge. Now, the world's attention is fixed on Washington as leaders and markets scramble to adjust to this new reality. Now, the court's decision signals a return to congressional control, but with new uncertainty. Lawmakers must now grapple with the responsibility of crafting trade policy, a task that promises heated debate and complex negotiations in the months ahead. The Supreme Court has drawn a clear line, reaffirming Congress's authority over trade and taxation. This ruling reestablishes the checks and balances at the core of American democracy, reminding the nation that no branch is above the law. This is more than an economic story. It's a defining moment for American democracy and the separation of powers. The decision will shape not only the future of trade, but also the very structure of government for years to come. As the world watches, the question remains, will this ruling temper the administration's trade agenda or spark new efforts to reshape the global order? The next chapter in America's economic and political story is just beginning, and its outcome will be felt around the globe. To truly grasp the significance of the Supreme Court's recent decision, it's important to first understand the policy at the heart of the controversy, a policy that marked a dramatic shift in America's approach to global commerce. The policy in question was a cornerstone of the Trump administration's economic agenda, and it was this very policy that the court ultimately struck down after months of heated debate. Tariffs, essentially taxes placed on imported goods, became the centerpiece of President Trump's America First strategy. This marked a sharp reversal from decades of U.S. support for free trade agreements and open markets, signaling a new era of economic nationalism. The administration imposed sweeping tariffs on steel, aluminum, and hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods. Officials justified these measures by citing concerns over national security, the need to protect American industries, and a desire for economic fairness in global trade. This aggressive approach quickly escalated into a global trade war. Other nations retaliated with their own tariffs, leading to higher costs for businesses and consumers, and causing widespread disruption in international supply chains. Supporters of the tariffs argued that these tough measures were necessary to protect American jobs, revive struggling industries, and restore the country's manufacturing base. On the other hand, critics blamed the tariffs for driving up prices on everyday goods, increasing costs for American families, and creating economic instability across multiple sectors. The policy deeply divided economists and politicians alike, fueling a fierce and ongoing debate over the merits of protectionism versus the benefits of free trade. Some saw it as a necessary correction, while others warned of long-term damage. Every new tariff announcement sent shockwaves through financial markets, rattling investors, and deepening uncertainty about the future of the global economy. The legal challenge that followed centered on a fundamental question. Did the president have the authority to unilaterally impose such sweeping trade measures without explicit approval from Congress? With the stakes so high, the stage was set for a dramatic constitutional showdown, one that would test the limits of presidential power and reshape the nation's approach to trade for years to come. The tariff's financial impact was swift and widespread. U.S. importers paid the tariffs, often passing costs to consumers through higher prices on everything from appliances to cars. studies showed American families bore the brunt, with rising costs straining household budgets. Some domestic industries like steel benefited, but many others, especially farmers and manufacturers, suffered from retaliatory tariffs and soaring input costs. The result, a patchwork of winners and losers, and a climate of uncertainty that stifled investment and hiring. Supply chains built over decades were disrupted overnight. Businesses scrambled to adapt, often at great expense. The instability dragged on economic growth, making the tariffs a source of ongoing pain for the U.S. economy. The ripple effects extended far beyond the initial tax, reshaping the business landscape. The Supreme Court's ruling was the climax of a years-long legal battle. American businesses, hit hard by rising costs, sued the administration, arguing the president had overstepped his authority. Lower courts initially sided with the government, but the appeals court raised doubts about the president's sweeping use of national security laws. The Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, recognizing its profound implications for the economy and the Constitution. Legal experts, business leaders, and lawmakers all weighed in, underscoring the stakes. At its core, could the president unilaterally wage a trade war, or was that Congress's domain? The case became a test of the separation of powers. The final decision would define the limits of executive authority for years to come. This legal battle was about more than tariffs. It was a fight over the Constitution itself. Congress holds the power to regulate trade, but over time it delegated some authority to the president for emergencies. Trump's lawyers argued he acted within the law, citing national security as justification for sweeping tariffs. Opponents countered that the administration abused this power, using national security as a pretext for economic protectionism. They warned that unchecked executive authority would erase Congress's role in trade policy. The Supreme Court had to decide, where does legitimate executive action end and unconstitutional overreach begin? The outcome would reshape the balance of power between the branches, the stakes, the very structure of American government. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled the Trump administration's broad tariffs unconstitutional. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that while Congress gave the president some authority, it never intended to let one person rewrite trade policy without a clear national security threat. The court found the administration's justification too broad, invalidating tariffs on steel, aluminum, and many Chinese goods. The ruling voids these tariffs, offering relief to businesses and consumers, and opening the door for possible refunds. The decision forces future presidents to work with Congress on major trade moves. National security can no longer be used as a catch-all for protectionism. The court has returned a key lever of economic power to Congress, fundamentally altering U.S. trade politics. This precedent will shape American trade for generations. The White House responded with defiance, calling the ruling a political attack on American jobs and security. The administration signaled it would seek new legal avenues, like the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, to reimpose tariffs. This strategy could trigger more legal battles and prolong uncertainty for businesses and global partners. Critics warn the administration's response risks a constitutional crisis by sidestepping the court's decision. Lawmakers urge cooperation, but the White House appears determined to press its trade agenda. For Trump and his supporters, the fight is about principle and sovereignty, not just policy. Even with the tariffs struck down, the America First trade philosophy endures. Trade remains a flashpoint in U.S. politics with no end in sight. The Supreme Court's decision sent shockwaves through financial markets across the country, catching investors and analysts off guard. The ruling was unexpected, and its immediate impact was felt on Wall Street, where uncertainty quickly turned into a frenzy of activity. Traders scrambled to adjust their positions, and newsrooms buzzed with urgent updates as the implications began to unfold. Stocks for import-heavy companies, especially in technology and retail, soared as investors anticipated lower costs and higher profits. Meanwhile, domestic steel and aluminum producers, who had benefited from protective tariffs, saw their shares tumble. Workers in these industries faced new anxieties about job security and the future of their plants as the competitive landscape shifted overnight. Globally, markets reacted with cautious optimism. Investors and governments around the world hoped the decision would lead to more stable and predictable trade relations, reducing the risk of sudden tariff hikes and retaliatory measures. International financial centers watched closely, aware that U.S. policy changes often ripple far beyond its borders. For everyday consumers, the end of tariffs promises more than just lower prices on imported goods. It offers relief from the inflation that has squeezed household budgets for years. Shoppers may soon find discounts at the checkout, and families could see their grocery bill shrink, making daily life a bit more affordable. Businesses, especially those reliant on global supply chains, see a chance to recover and expand. However, industries that once thrived under tariff protection now face tough competition from abroad. Some factories may struggle to survive, while others will need to innovate quickly to stay afloat in a more open market. Politically, the ruling has energized both sides of the debate. Free trade advocates are celebrating what they see as a victory for open markets and consumer choice. Meanwhile, Trump's base and protectionist supporters are rallying against what they call an establishment betrayal, vowing to fight for American jobs and industries. Trade policy is now set to dominate the next election cycle, fueling fierce debate among candidates and voters alike. Politicians are already sharpening their arguments, knowing that the future of American industry and the livelihoods of millions hang in the balance. On the world stage, the decision opens the door for diplomatic resets and new negotiations with key allies. Countries that once braced for trade wars may now seek closer cooperation, hoping to forge agreements that benefit both sides and restore trust in international partnerships. But with the president's main tool for shaping trade policy now limited, global rivals are recalibrating their strategies. Some may see new opportunities while others prepare for a more competitive environment, knowing that U.S. influence in trade negotiations has shifted. The economic and political fallout from this landmark decision will shape America's future on the world stage for years to come, influencing not just markets and industries, but the very direction of U.S. leadership in a rapidly changing global economy. The Supreme Court's decision has brought America to a crossroads on trade. The aggressive unilateral approach is over. Now the nation must choose between renewed global cooperation or new forms of protectionism. Uncertainty will linger as the administration weighs its next move and Congress considers its role. The debate is no longer just about economics, but about fairness, national identity, and the future of American prosperity. The challenge: craft a trade policy that is both economically sound and politically sustainable. The future of U.S. trade rests not just with leaders but with the American people. This ruling opens a new chapter, inviting a national conversation about America's place in the world. The choices made now will define the nation's prosperity and security for generations.